will go into Dynamics 365. This is the April release. And what I wanted to point out here is that as we come down, you'll see over here on the left-hand side, let me clear that out a little bit here, try that again. Over here on the left-hand side, we have a new module. And that module is landed cost. So we'll go ahead and look at that and just get a brief idea of some of the capabilities. Again, I want to collapse this because I want you to see all aspects of the module and the capabilities. But the idea would be starting from the ground up to be able to define things like containers. What types of containers might things be coming in on? What are some of the costing rules and cost templates that I want to be able to use and set up? There's multiple ways that you can do that, and this is where those rules would be set up. So super important to be able to define our containers, our costing, and then as important would be things like multi-leg journeys. So if we think of that scenario where the goods are leaving Hong Kong as an example, and they're getting on obviously an ocean vessel, containers are being loaded onto that vessel. It takes 10 days to make the crossing. It comes into a port on the west coast of the United States. Now, a secondary leg of that journey might be to then take that, let's say, from the vessel to an import duties warehouse where it needs to be inspected or cleared. And then from there, it's loaded onto a rail car, and that rail car leaves Los Angeles and goes to my warehouse in Kansas City. All of those are legs of my journey that I want to be able to define and also want to be able to say, how much does that movement of goods cost us? Because what we want to do is model that supply chain as much as possible, get those costs as accurate as possible. So obviously a lot of setup that we'd want to do here, a lot of specific types of rules about what type of product gets landed cost associated with them in what types of ways. And what we want to do is build up to the point where we've got things like our shipping containers or vessel as well. And all of that is leading up to the voyage that I talked about. So from a procedure standpoint, from a processing standpoint, what we want to be able to do is take our purchase orders as they're being entered and accumulated and be able to put those on to say what container they're on, what vessel they're on, what landed cost journey do they go through. All of which ends up when we receive product back in through a typical receiving process, that those costs are then allocated as accurately as possible. Now, what ends up happening, the reality is up front, we do our best guess. We do an estimate of those landed costs because we may not know the actuals yet, but what this tool enables us to do is to make a model of that journey that the goods are going to go through. We do an estimate, and then we receive and allocate those costs across our products. Just as a final note with this module, many times after the fact, we get the actual invoices in, and instead of being $600 worth of transportation and duties costs, maybe it's $800 in total. So the system will correct itself. It will then increase essentially the cost of my items by saying instead of having $600 of costs, I actually had $800. So it does have that capability. We do an estimate up front. We do a correction when we get actual invoices for all those legs of the journey and the services that were performed. So that's a very quick snapshot of what is a very capable module that I think will have a lot of value for people who are having those long lead times of products and importing products through multiple channels.